What was your "I'm dating a fucking idiot" moment? She had a new telescope and thought it would be really cute to check out the stars after a date one night. I don't remember the full conversation, but at some point I joked about us being stuck together on this giant ball in space. She looked through the telescope again and said, "So, you believe that, huh?" I just stared at her blankly because I was afraid of that question going any further. Anyways, happy to share that we didn't last long, but did you guys know that there's totally a lot of evidence that our planet is probably not round? When he ran out of gas while in line at the Starbucks drive-thru right across the street from the gas station. I told him to get gas first because his car was low, but he really needed that iced caramel macchiato. I asked why he didn't listen to me, and he replied with, "I thought I could make it." He ended up pushing the car through the drive-thru and got his coffee while doing so, then parked the car in the lot and called a tow to tow it back home instead of the gas station across the street. No, he did not get any gas that day. He waited until his dad got off work to bring a 3-gallon jug of gasoline because I refused to enable that shit ETA. I fell asleep after commenting, "I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone with all these comments. Holy shit, thank you for the reward." Yes, I'm still in a relationship with him. He's a space case, but so am I. Just not to that extent. LMAO, I have not let him live that day down, and he has learned to get gas first every time now. The worst part of that day was the fact he didn't remember he had a canister for gasoline in his trunk. He told me he towed the car home instead of the gas station because he was too embarrassed and ashamed of himself. I asked why he still pushed his car through the Starbucks drive-thru, and he deadpan goes, "I had enough stars for a free drink. I was gonna put the extra money I saved in my tank. Gas." My brain broke for a second because he uses the preloaded Starbucks app. How was he going to use $7 of his preloaded Starbucks app at a Chevron? He still hasn't answered me, and it's been 2 years since it happened. Edit 2. I showed him this and he flipped me off and said if this makes me famous, he demands royalties. Senior year of high school, I'd been offered a full-ride college scholarship for athletics. My girlfriend at the time was always annoyed with how much time I dedicated to my sport. In a particular conversation, I made my case that without the sport, I probably wouldn't be able to go to college, and even if I could, I'd be riddled with debt. The scholarship was a life changer for me. She got mad that I called the scholarship a life changer and demanded that I quit my sport so we could hang out more. We broke up about 90 seconds after that comment. Dude, I was dating turned out to be the worst kind of know-it-all because his facts were mostly wrong. He told me not to tell him that because he doesn't like it. It's been done before, and it's not true. I hadn't encountered an incident of it yet, so I memorized that, but didn't think about it much, even if I thought it was weird to tell me that. Fast forward a few days, we were sitting at dinner at a restaurant talking about whatever when peripherally something about human organs floats by, and that the pH of the stomach is about 3. He looks at me with a smile of deep condescension and says, "The pH of the stomach is 10. He said that so final and with such an air of superiority that I stopped mid-sentence. You don't want to be rude back, and mistakes happen anyway, so I tried to tell him politely that he might have a false memory there, or a teacher in his past might have mixed something up. I just didn't want to embarrass him more than he already did himself in public. But he was committed to this. My name. "I know the pH of the stomach is 10. "You're wrong." I told him to please look it up because I'm a biologist and I'm confident enough in my education. He did, and he was wrong. There were a couple similar incidents after this one. Hilariously, when we broke up, one of his gripes was, "I believe you think I'm stupid." In reality, it was that and the fact he was not only wrong, but malicious and utterly confident in both. I was dating a guy and we worked together, but we're on opposing shifts. I come in for turnover and he lets me know that he can't get into the computer in the office and the password on the sticky note was not working. Sticky note very straightforward, written like login, XYZ, password, XYZ. Thought, that's weird because I literally used it the night before. Get to the computer, punch in the password, and boom, I'm logged in. I asked him what he was putting in and he goes, "Password XYYZ, like it says on the sticky note. Darling, the password is XYZ, not password XYZ. Not his brightest moment. And the kicker is, he did this for several days and thought it was an issue everyone was having. Not a girlfriend, but a family member. We lived in Alaska, and she and her husband, who lived in the lower 48, were talking about coming to visit us. She talked about driving and was excited to drive on the bridge. We asked, what bridge? "The one that goes from Washington State to Anchorage," she replied. We told her that that did not exist. She'd have to fly. She was surprised to learn that there wasn't a bridge, but excused it by saying, "Well, I'm just not good with geometry." She meant geography. Didn't date this guy, I worked with him. He was somehow a master electrician. He would say, "Be Pacific when you talk." We told him the word was specific. He said no, it's Pacific because of the ocean. We showed him online the definition of specific, and he legit said, anyone can fake an internet article. It was on Wikipedia. He also had a fiance who ended up in the hospital for months, and he never once visited her. When I, a woman, asked him why not, he said, she was on drugs and would never know I was there anyway. This woman wasn't in a coma. She had had a huge tumor removed and complications after, and yeah, she was on lots of meds, but she was awake most of the time. Dude couldn't figure out why she broke the engagement the minute she left the hospital. My ex-wife wanted to know when I would pay her back for paying the bills when I was on short-term disability with an injury. My salary had been covering the bills the last 3 years, and the money she earned was used for. I thought it was a request that didn't require an explanation, for us to not dip into savings when the disposable income was already there. Needless to say, she has a shopping addiction now. He asked why I always made sure to use the bathroom after sex, since I'm prone to UTIs, which is fine enough. But when I told him, backed up by advice from both my regular doctor and gyno, he argued with me about it and continued picking fights about it for almost a week until he Googled it and looked at like 3 separate web articles before he finally begrudgingly accepted peeing after helps lessen the chance of getting one. I still have no idea what his issue with it was. I was in a long-term relationship with a girl while I was attending grad school, and we shared a studio apartment. One winter evening, I had planned to spend a late night at the school library doing some reading assignments, but was so exhausted that I decided to pack up and go home early. When I got home, I opened the door and immediately got hit by an overwhelming smell of gas. Turns out this girl had decided that she was cold and the best way to heat up our apartment would be to turn the oven on and leave the oven door open, thinking the heat from the oven would warm the apartment. Did I mention the windows were completely shut and locked? I immediately opened the windows, got her out of the apartment, and called building management. She couldn't understand what the big deal was until I finally got through to her that she could have very well died of carbon monoxide poisoning had I not come home early that night. To top it off, she told me she had planned to light some candles. We broke up a few months later. My GF of a few months, her friend, and myself were cruising around town just for shits and gigs one night. They proceeded to have a conversation about how cool it is that the moon gives off its own light at night like the sun does during the day. I said, "That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. You two aren't serious, right?" They were dead serious. I then said, "The moon is a satellite, and it reflects the sun's light, and that's why there's different phases based on the sun and moon's position." They told me I was an idiot because how can the sun shine on the moon when it's not out at night? Yeah, I drove them home, and we broke up that night. 2 weeks after we got married and moved into our first apartment together, he drops the "I don't believe in monogamy" statement that felt like a sucker punch. I asked him if he knew this before we got married. He said, yes. I asked him why the fuck he married me then. He said he still wanted to wife me, but now wanted to be able to explore crushes and see where they go. ETA. We divorced 5 years later after being together total for 10 years, 5 dating, 5 married. I tried my absolute best, but the hits just kept coming until our marriage was beyond redemption or hope. I've remarried happily with a house, 2 dogs, and a toddler. My ex has also remarried with 2 kids and has been sued for medical malpractice twice now. When my ex-hubby and I were married, we moved into an older house. The kitchen only had 1 outlet, and for some reason the stove's vent hood was taking up one of the plugs. This would have been okay, because to make up for it, the vent hood had outlets on it to use as a pass-through to make up for taking up an outlet. The problem was, our countertop appliance needs were many, and none of the cords were long enough for the vent outlets to be useful. I got us a long, grounded power strip that could mount on the wall so we could leave the hood plugged in and use the other outlet plug for the power strip. After about 5 minutes, he came out of the kitchen and said, "I got the power strip plugged in and I was able to free up the first plug, but now the hood light won't come on and the fan won't work." So I went to see what was going on, and fam, this man had plugged the hood into itself. He was a super scrawny pale guy with a weak chin and outdated glasses, but came swaggering into a mall to meet me wearing a denim shirt with manufactured ripped sleeves and patches from what were supposed to be badass gangs. First thing he said was to ask how I liked his shirt while glaring at any men passing by, thinking they were staring at me, and therefore needed to be intimidated. The sex was amazing, but I could not handle his weird alpha male complex anymore. If he had a theme song, it would be played on kazoos and badly tuned recorders played by bored 9-year-olds. I'd been dating a girl for a few months during the pandy who forwarded me a load of WhatsApp messages about the dangers of 5G. It was a compilation of people saying their skin felt on fire, people attacking phone line installers, some dead birds in the road, and the obligatory idiots shouting, "I ain't seen nothing like this. It's the 5G man," and stating facts, filmed from inside their car while smoking and barely being able to explain what 5G was. It had done the rounds between her friends who had all commented about how dangerous it was, despite them all having the latest iPhones, which was an oh no moment. She then started on anti-vax stuff saying COVID wasn't real, and she didn't need to get it despite being Indian and higher risk. The final out was where she said she'd never be an organ donor or give blood, but would happily take someone else's. Also, she thought my cats would attack her, despite them trying to make friend with her.